Hello and welcome to the Blood and Pigment channel. I'm Joseph and I have a new Blood and Plunder battle report for you. This is a 200-point amphibious game of the Capture the Surgeon scenario from the Raise the Black expansion. Played against Ian, a young man in my local group here in Oregon City. This battle was sort of historically inspired, featuring Blackbeard looking for a surgeon and medicine based on reports of his motives for blockading Charleston in 1718. Let's look at the scenario real quick, then the forces, then we'll jump into the action and see if Blackbeard gets his doctor. The Capture the Surgeon scenario is amphibious, but it is unique in that it breaks the convention of having one player start on land and the other start at sea. In this case, both players start with their entire force at sea, and it's a race to get on land and claim a surgeon character that starts in a building near the very back of the board. I like this particular scenario because it eliminates the difficulty in balancing terrain placement and utilizing a ship that can sometimes be challenging setting up amphibious games. In the scenario, to capture the surgeon, a player just needs to get their unit either into base contact with the surgeon or move into the same structure section as the surgeon if he's unclaimed. If a unit is destroyed or becomes shaken, they lose control of the surgeon and it can be claimed by somebody else. A unit can also spend action to hand off or claim the surgeon from a unit that is up to 1 inch away. So you can bucket brigade him back if you want. The objectives are simple. If you control the surgeon, your opponent gains 1 strike point. If you get the surgeon back on board your ship, which is a challenge, to get all the way across the board and back again, that gives your opponent a 2nd strike point. Let's look at the forces. I'm playing a 200-point Blackbeard's men force in 2 piraguas. I like the piraguas for amphibious games because it doesn't hurt you to just sail them up on the beach and then you can push them back off again. You have to worry about grappling on the docks or anything. And I like the Blackbeard's men faction because it gives you a +2 to the attacker roll, which in this scenario is not a big deal. It gives you a free mulligan of your hand of activation cards. It gives you false colors if you're the attacker, which can hide your identity for a bit. And if you have 2 or more ships, which I do in this case, you get the vendetta rule against whoever you're fighting, and that can help manage your fatigue. That's quite a bit of benefit for one faction there. Better than the Golden Age pirates, which can be drunk too. Blackbeard, he brings a lot of special rules to his own unit. He has Tough, which helps you drop fatigue, keep in the game. He has God's Blessing on the Devil's Luck, which grants you 1 extra fortune point. He has Terror, which applies a potential fatigue to enemy units at the beginning of the game. He has Cold-Blooded, which gives his units bonuses when attacking fatigued enemy units. And he has Bold, which lets him manage a melee brawl a little more efficiently. I attached Blackbeard to a unit of 8 veteran roundsmen with buccaneer guns and bracer pistols and gave them a local guide character. A veteran unit with a commander and quick from the local guide should be able to speed across the board and claim the surgeon pretty fast. That's my plan. I had another unit of 8 pirates with buccaneer guns in Blackbeard's piragua, and then in the second piragua I had 10 pirates with pistols assigned to full complement of 4 swivel guns, and then a unit of 7 Jamaican privateers in the basic sturdy musket unit. Ian brought the full force of the British Royal Navy against me. His commander choice was Chaloner Ogle, which is a great choice for that faction. He has Strict, which lets him apply fatigue to his own men to gain a bonus when shooting or doing anything. Sailing Master, which can help his ship move faster. And Expert Broadside, which can help him manage cannons better. Ian had 2 sizable units of Sea Dogs, assigned to 4 swivel guns in the front of his ship, and 2 pairs of light cannons with grape shot in the middle of his brigantine, which was upgraded with that sneaky, freshly careened hull for the bonus move to get him closer to shore before the game even starts. He also had a unit of able seamen with a fire pot and a unit of British regulars. All units in his force had the Tough ability to help manage fatigue. Alright, let's jump into setup and the first turn of the game. We rolled for the attacker, and Blackbeard rolled high, even against the Navy's +4 bonus. Ian placed his Navy Brigantine in one corner, and I placed my 2 Piraguas on the opposite, all ships at top speed. Before the game began, we rolled for the pirates' false colors, and the British were not tricked at all, discovered before turn 1 started. And then each of the British units rolled a fatigue test with a single die for Blackbeard's terror rule. 2 units passed, and 2 units took 1 fatigue. My opening hand had some great spades in it, but they're kind of wasted on the first turn. We are too far away to really shoot muskets or swivels, and initiative isn't that important during the first turn. I sent the Piragua with Blackbeard in straight towards the shore, while the other Piragua sailed more towards the center of the table to engage the British as they landed. We both fired off swivel guns near the end of the turn, pirates landing 3 hits on the British, but Ian passed all saves and fatigue tests. The English swivel guns drew first blood by knocking out one of my pirates in the aggressive Piragua. At the end of turn 1, the British Brigantine was within grapple distance of the docks, and Blackbeard had almost reached land. The British took initiative on the second turn, but failed their grapple test on the first activation, but used a fortune point to succeed. I fired my quick swivel guns off again at closer range, taking down 1 sea dog. The British fired back with their more deadly grape shot. 2 hits and no saves makes 2 more dead pirates. Ogle uses command points to start swarming units onto the dock and get onto land. Over on my left-hand side, Blackbeard's Piragua landed, and I did some quick running here. I used a spade with the local guide, so they have a free movement on quick, and they have 2 actions from being a veteran roundsman, plus the command point action with Blackbeard, so I think I moved them 15 inches into the middle of the board. 1 activation, took 1 fatigue for doing it. The British abandoned their cannons and started all poured onto the dock there. My Jamaican privateers fired on exposed regulars, hoping to take down some high-cost models right away at point-blank range, but he saved them all again, and no fatigue, of course. I moved my second landed pirate unit way up the board again, using a club, and then I had 2 big units right in the middle of the board, hopefully ready to grab that surgeon. By the end of the turn, Ian had nearly all of his units piled up on the dock, and I had my forces split, 1 half focused on the surgeon, and half attempting to slow the enemy and pepper them while they moved across open docks. Ian's British take initiative again on turn 3, and it's firepot time. Using the new, less fiery firepot rules, the Sea Dogs toss 1 firepot into my boat, 10, 10, and 9, killing a couple models and starting my Piragua on fire and spreading fatigue everywhere. It's supposed to be hard to start fires now, but 2 10s out. I respond with what I think will be a big activation with Blackbeard. He uses his command point to try to repair the Piragua, but fails. He used a command point to have the Jamaican privateers fire into the massive British at point blank, but entirely failed again. Over the course of turn 3, my Jamaican privateers and pirates abandoned that burning Piragua, but get hit hard by the British regulars in the process. At the end of the turn, I've seized the surgeon, and the British haven't moved very far yet, but all my scattered pirates are discouraged and pretty fatigued. Going into the second half of the game, the British have a strike point for the pirates controlling the surgeon, but the pirates' casualties are starting to pile up. I lead with Blackbeard again, trying to blunt the oncoming horde of British. A full-ranged attack with muskets takes down 1 able seaman, and Blackbeard starts the surgeon back towards the Piragua with a command point. Both the able seamen and the regulars target Blackbeard's unit. This time, the firepot does little damage, but the regulars score 4 hits, and I fail all 4 saves. I used a fortune point to re-roll, hoping to save some of my 7-point roundsmen, but they all fail again. Then Blackbeard is shaken. The British advance while the pirates try to organize a measured retreat with the surgeon's prize. A large unit of sea dogs charges right into my largest unit of pirates. I release a massive defensive shot, including several blunderbusses, but no hits again. These pirates must be drunk. Sea dogs score 6 hits, killing 5 pirates and sending them back shaken. The Jamaican privateers try to cover with a retreat, keeping up their rate of fire. They score 1 hit, but Ian saves the model, but they finally take 1 point of fatigue for all my trouble. The only bright spot in the game right now is the unit controlling the surgeon. They're still intact and on the way back to the boat. The surgeon rallies Blackbeard's unit on the way by and actually restores 1 model to the table. Hardly ever happens. At the end of turn 4, I have a strike point for casualties, and Ian has a strike point for my control of the surgeon. Can these pirates last another 2 turns? Turn 5 is a lot of rallying for both sides. I use Blackbeard's 3 command points to rally all my shaken units. There's a large melee with 2 of my units and a large British unit in the middle. My fight attempt deals out 2 hits, but no casualties or fatigue for the English. These English are not going down. The British fight back and destroy the last of my Jamaican privateers and take down 2 more pirates, but give no fatigue. The regulars shoot again at Blackbeard's unit, killing the guy the surgeon just threw back into the battle. More British engage Blackbeard's unit while the surgeon moves closer to the last unburnt Piragua. At the end of turn 5, half of my models have been wiped out, but the strike point count is still 2-2. Turn 6, and it's a last desperate effort for both sides. English take initiative again, and the regulars are able to let off a half shot at the retreating surgeon, but fail to slow them down. I continue to go aggressive with Blackbeard, trying to get the most out of my brace of pistols in melee. Blackbeard succeeds in finally taking out 1 English unit, but its command point doesn't help the last pirate unit of 3 men fighting a much larger unit of sea dogs. So the sea dogs fight back and overkill my poor pirates. I'm down to 2 units. In the very last actions of the game, I'm able to move the surgeon into my Piragua, which is really important for the scenario strike point conditions. The few remaining able seamen move up and shoot their pistols in the last effort to knock down a couple more pirates before the end of the game, but fail to score any hits with those short-range pistols. That's the end of the game. I have 22 casualties of my original 35 models, which gives me 2 strike points, 2 more models than it would have been 3. Ian lost 10 of his 26 starting models, which is only 1 strike point, but since I controlled the surgeon and got him back into one of my ships, that gives the British 2 more strike points. 2 to 3 strike points in Blackbeard's favor. Blackbeard has no crew, but he has his doctor. Wow, that was a close game. Let's talk about what went well for the Pirates and what went well from the British and what didn't work so well. Let's start with Ian's British. He had some great things going for him in this game, but one drawback was his force was pretty small at 26 men with 200 points. A lot of his points ended up sunk into his cannons and ship, and he ultimately didn't get a lot of value out of those cannons, which is one of the things you got to balance in amphibious scenarios especially. Then he had 2 sizable units of regulars and able seamen, which are really solid, but pretty high cost. But the quality units did work out pretty well. He kept those models on the table, while mine were just tipping over. Tough rule on all his units was incredible. Knocking off fatigue even with the new errated tough that's not quite as good. Just keeping fatigue off, having some free chances to take it off is really valuable to save his actions. Tactics wise, he chose to continue shooting with regulars while moving into melee with all the other units. This worked pretty well actually. I would have tried to get those regulars into melee with their bayonets, but looking back, his regulars were kind of his only effective range unit once he got off his swivels and cannons, so he kind of needed to do that, especially trying to nail down my unit grabbing that surgeon. The firepot did good work, crushing my unit's resolve and forcing them to get out of that Piragua sooner than I had planned, even with the errated version of the firepot. Ogle didn't provide as much value in this game as he usually does, or compared to what he can do with a cannon duel, and it was actually kind of hard to use his strict rule very often with all the fatigue and close range fighting going around. I felt my pirate list was pretty well prepared to reach the surgeon quickly, and that was actually my main success in this game, and it's hard to balance that goal with the rest of the battle in this scenario. Devoting that whole unit of pirates just to move up, grab the surgeon, and move back is a pretty big tax. About 1/4 of my force was just doing that. I do love that local guide on the veteran command unit. They can move so quickly. I didn't use that to grab the surgeon, but I was able to move that Blackbeard unit way up really quickly and grab some of that board. My tactic of splitting up my force between the middle and the side of the board, trying to tie up his units in a fight while I grabbed the surgeon, sort of worked, but it resulted in a bloodbath and almost killed me. If that final volley from the regulars had knocked down 2 more of my pirates, or even just shaken that unit so it wasn't able to jump in my Piragua, I would have lost either straight up through strike points, or if it was a tie, by the tiebreaker, since I had lost so many more models. I do like the combination of units I used, that combo of 1 unit of veteran roundsmen, 2 units of cheap pirates. I had 1 with brace of pistols and 1 with muskets, and then 1 unit of the more reliable Jamaican privateers with that sidearm, pistol, and musket, and a 5 resolve. think that's a really fun combination for pirates. Love the Paraguas for amphibious game. They're fairly cheap, although 14 points for 2 Paraguas is almost the same as the brigantine. But they're really fast, they're pretty large, you can fit 20 models in it, and you can just land them on the beach without having to bother to grapple or anything. Blackbeard worked pretty well. His combo of rules was pretty solid for this game. Extra fortune point and tough were always great. Bold was actually useful in this game with some melee going down. I usually rely on cold-blooded a lot to get bonuses when attacking other fatigue units, but I had so much fatigue I barely got to use it. And it's really hard to trigger that against the British Navy. The dice didn't work very well for me in this game. There's so many rolls like, well, nothing, and then re-roll, but then nothing, or saves went down poorly. But that's what makes for memorable games. I really enjoyed this scenario using the land or the amphibious setup. I think it's pretty balanced, with no asymmetric goals that might give one side an advantage or kind of catch you up off guard. And it presents difficult decisions on how much you focus on the objective compared to just focusing on the fight. I was really thrilled to actually restore a model with a surgeon. I think it's a fun way to kind of interact with that surgeon character if you might not naturally or more often put him in your list, but he can get a guy back on the table if he's been knocked off. And it always feels really fun when that actually happens. I come back. The scenario can play out very differently. That night we were playing this game, we looked over at another table playing the same scenario, and one player had chosen just not to land, and he just stayed in his ship and blasted away with cannons as his opponent got on land, and then grappled onto the ship and just took the ship over, giving him a load of strike points, which is a very different way to play the scenario. So you really got to stay flexible and not get too fixated on one part of the game, otherwise you could get knocked over. A note on the stuff on the table here, the surgeon model you see here came out in the 2024 organized play kit, but it's available for purchase in Firelock Games now. This scenario comes from the Raise the Black expansion, and this cool Blackbeard model you might have seen on the screen here is from the excellent 2-player starter set for Blood and Plunder. And some quick comments on the terrain and other things on the board. Game mat is a 4x4 mat from Caribbean Shores mat from Table War. Excellent mat. Best purchase you can make if you want to try some amphibious games. The docks are from the Ports of Plunder series from Foreground, but they aren't available anymore since Foreground shut down, but you can get a very similar product from Things from the Basement now. These buildings on the table are from Empires at War. They aren't the nicest MDF buildings, but they're really easy to put together. Don't require you to paint them if you're happy with how they look, and they're on the cheaper side. Hope you enjoyed the battle report. I highly recommend this scenario for doing some fun or competitive play. It always makes a fun story, and it's really easy one to try with amphibious setup. Thanks to Ian for playing a solid British game, and big thanks to Riley for being the scribe and taking all these detailed notes, and thank you for watching.